So, a big and warm welcome to everyone, and thanks for joining our LinkedIn live event. We'll be discussing smart city activities in London today with three great speakers that I have here on the screen already. We did tech check, so everything should be working smoothly. We will also keep this as interactive as possible via this channel. So please, for everyone that's listening in, use the comment function to ask your questions. We will also ask you some questions via Slido. So everything a browser will do to actually get you as much involved as possible into this discussion. So before we kick off, let me just introduce myself quickly. My name is Alexander Schmidt. I'm the CEO and founder of BABLE. And we aim to bring together public authorities and private sector to get more technology in cities. So please stick with us in this great discussion, because today, as part of the London Tech Week, we will be discussing very specifically on what's happening in London. So today I have here with me Jam, who is the program manager for Sharing Cities, the project Sharing Cities, which we're going to talk about a lot today, from GLA in London. Specifically in the project management office. Hello, Jam. Thanks for joining. Then we have here Sarah, who is also program manager for Sharing Cities, but specifically with the activities in Greenwich, Digital Greenwich. Happy to have you too.
Morning, everyone.
And last but not least, we have Graham, who is an absolute expert, not just in the UK, but also all across Europe when it comes to urban market transformation. And he's the founding partner of Urban DNA. Thanks for joining also, Graham. So I will allow each of our panelists a quick introduction for themselves, what they are working on a daily basis, specifically when it comes to sharing cities. Before we go into this, let me show you the first slide and also explain to you a little bit on how this works. Dear audience, so if you go at slido.com and enter the code 529068, you will be asked a question. Because we would like to know who we are speaking to today, so that we can also maybe tailor the questions a little bit more in those directions, and be more as responsive as possible to your needs. So if you go on slido.com, enter 529068, or you just scan the QR code up here, you'll be asked the first question, and we'll have two more throughout this this session, where we'll want to have your feedback on who we're actually speaking to and what you think about what we are talking about. So while we run the first question online, so please everyone start answering here, everyone that's watching. I would maybe ask Jem first to introduce what you are doing at Sharing Cities at GLA, and then we move further and then start our line of questioning. Please, Jem.
Lovely, thank you, Alex. So, as you say, I'm based at the Greater London Authority. I'm a member of the Smarter London team, and I'm the programme manager and the partnership lead for Sharing Cities, which I'll just introduce so that we all are on the same page with what we're talking about today. So Sharing Cities is one of 18 projects under the EU's Horizon 2020 call. Sharing Cities is a large collaboration as part of that, of about 120 people, about 35 organisations across government, industry and academia across 6 European cities. And we're tasked collectively with delivering a portfolio of about 30 projects as part of our programme in the area of green technology and infrastructure. So more specifically, the kinds of technologies we work with are around electric mobility, building retrofit across public, private and historic buildings, all underpinned by integrated data platforms. And a really significant part of what we've done in this programme, a key part of Sharing Cities, is the citizen engagement element, which we've done through our digital social market. I'm sure we'll talk about that further in this session. So really our programme lies at the intersection between traditional infrastructure and emerging technologies, but the kind of point of Sharing Cities is to demonstrate the value of that technology through real life applications and the potential for really transformational savings that come from this kind of technology, both financially and environmentally. And finally, a key part of Sharing Cities is then the replication of those results. So a lot of what we do is about capturing a robust evidence base as part of these kind of real life demonstrations of this technology, and to couple all that with investable business models, again, so that we can scale and replicate what's worked in other cities.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot for this, Jam. I'll start understanding a lot more about Sharing Cities. And one of these areas where Sharing Cities is doing and trialing a lot is in Greenwich. So Sarah, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you guys are doing in Greenwich.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alex. So as Jem explained, the Sharing Cities project is huge. It involves many municipalities, industry, academic partners from across primarily 3 cities in Europe, with 3 cities that also are closely following what we do. So for those 3 lead cities, each of those has what we call a demonstrator area, or somewhere where all of these new technologies, these new approaches are being trialled in the real world, and we're demonstrating the value of those. So the Royal Borough of Greenwich is London's demonstrator area. It's where all of the things are being delivered. And my role in the Royal Borough of Greenwich is to make sure that happens. So I'm the project coordinator, project manager for the delivery of all our projects in Greenwich. And as Jem said, those projects encompass how we use new technology, new approaches, particularly in the area of environment. So improving the environmental impact and improving services in energy, transport and housing. And for Greenwich, that's meant a varying amount of projects. On the transport side, on the mobility side, we've looked at shared and electric mobility, things like EV lamppost charging, which we'll talk a bit more about today, electric bike share, smart parking. On the energy and housing side, we've been focusing on the retrofit of social housing and how we are more ambitious and how we use technology in that. So can we make that social housing more energy efficient? Can we apply new renewable technologies, smarter energy systems and sensing technology to improve that service? So yeah, a lot going on in Greenwich, and a lot has gone on over the last 5 years as a demonstrator area for the Sharing Cities project.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Sarah. So for anyone joining the London Tech Week in person, drop by the Royal Borough of Greenwich. You might find quite some of the things touchable that Sarah has just been mentioning. Now, Graham, if you look at who's joining us today, there's a heavy focus on the UK and Germany, but also some participants from other parts of Europe. We have Greece, we have Spain, we have Portugal here. So when introducing yourself, also tell us a little bit about the place of Sharing Cities in the smart cities and community ecosystem across Europe, and what the bigger plans behind all of this are now.
Sure. So thanks, Alex, and hello, everybody. Way back in 2014, I remember we were writing the proposal to the European Commission for Sharing Cities. And I said, I know how we're going to be successful here. And Andrew turned around and said, how do we do that? And I said, let's put something bold in this. So we actually said, we're going to take our 25 million euros from the Commission and create and stimulate and trigger 500 million investment. And I remember he kind of paled and went white and said, how do we do that? And I said, I have no idea, but I just believe it's possible. That has been the mantra which I have personally really felt and held throughout the whole process, because it actually puts a purpose to these programs. It's great that we can demonstrate, but it's far, far greater if we can actually demonstrate at scale across Europe. So at the moment, Sharing Cities is unique in the 18 programs as being the only one that has such a ridiculously high number to aim for in terms of triggering investment. I'll tell you later the good news around that, if Jem doesn't sneak in there before me. But this, from that perspective, there are two roles that I've been involved in. One is looking at business models, financing and funding for sharing cities. So in other words, how can we put together solutions in a way that they can be adopted with confidence in the fellow cities and beyond? And then on a more European level, I am part of the business models and financing across all of the 18 programs, so that we're actually looking as a collective whole about what we can do to stimulate activity at scale, and then align that, which is the 18 programs which are funded, with the Smart Cities Marketplace, which is a pro bono convening role from the European Commission. Build those two things together and sit them underneath the new climate neutral Smart Cities Marketplace. You've got, mission, you've got something which in theory should actually really help Europe advance fast and forward. And let's not stop at Europe. Europe's very relevant to the rest of the world, genuinely. So if you read the IPCC report, we've got some pretty nasty things creeping up on us quite rapidly. What is it that Europe can do to demonstrate real value through real solutions in cities that sharing cities and others have got, to actually influence the rest of the world? That's good for the rest of the world. It's good for European businesses too. So kind of that's where my headset's at.
Brilliant. Thanks for this, Graham. And you've mentioned this is part of a larger group of programs, 18 overall, with cities all across Europe. Jem, which ones are the ones involved next to London itself within the Sharing Cities project? So who are the ones that you are most actively are working with?
Hi, Alex. I'm sorry. Do you mean our cities or our yes, our cities?
Cities. Sorry for that.
Yes, no problem. So we have three. The Sharing Cities follows the Horizon model, where we have 3 lighthouse cities and 3 fellow cities involved in our project. So our 3 lighthouse cities are Milan, there in Italy, Lisbon, obviously in Portugal, and Greenwich here in London, are 3 lighthouse cities. Our 3 fellow cities then are Warsaw in Poland, Burgas in Bulgaria, and Bordeaux in France.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for this, Sarah. Specifically, talking about the activities in Greenwich, you've mentioned a lot of different activities that you're working on, and Graham has said very rightfully that this is part of a big challenge we face on the global and European scale. But what are the things that are actually challenging on the ground to get these great projects that help us advance get implemented in Greenwich or in other places across Europe?
Yes, thanks. It's a great question, and it's one that we as a group all have very close experience with, having just been through it for the last 5 years and having just sort of worked hard to get these projects delivered and to realise their potential over the last few years. So I'd like to draw on, I think, just 1 or 2 challenges or obstacles just to highlight those. The first is the fact that these, we designed this project 5 years ago. What we wanted to see was the value of really front-running, innovative technology and approaches. And we wanted to do it on the ground, and that does involve the municipality, and it does involve all of the partners in that area to help deliver it. But it's quite new. It's new stuff. You're talking about sort of pushing people beyond their day-to-day work, pushing in terms of the technology that you're looking at, but also in the ways that you're working and what you're asking everyone to get together to deliver. And that is a challenge in itself. As municipalities, as local areas across the UK and across Europe, and this has been highlighted even more with the COVID pandemic, we've got a large role to do already. We've got those day-to-day key core services that we're delivering. So with every research and innovation project, what you're doing is asking sort of everyone to come together to deliver something that's very new, new in terms of the technology, as I said, and new in terms of the way of working. And that's a challenge. I think the other challenge to raise is that it's research and innovation. It doesn't always go to plan. And I think that's something we can forget with these projects, that we do have such a bold vision. We want to see that realised, but we have to be a bit resilient. We have to remember that things don't always go to plan, and try and find ways around that. And we faced that ourselves in sharing cities, in particular in Greenwich. For example, with our e-bike scheme, we fitted some new sensing technology that allowed us to see the routes that people were taking. Fortunately, didn't quite work, and told us that a lot of people were cycling to and around the equator, which we know in Greenwich wasn't true. We had in our one of our measures around digital and social market in a scheme called Greenwich Energy Hero, the technology we put into people's homes was dropping out, and we found that it was because of a battery failure, and we had to rectify that. So, technology and innovation does have its hiccups and doesn't always go to plan. So you have to be a bit resilient and aware of that.
Some great examples, but basically showing challenges in all areas: organizational, getting the people involved, technical, as well. Even though I assume it would be a great cycling trip from Greenwich to
it certainly would.
With all these challenges in mind, and with having put down on paper this great ambition, Graham, of scaling a 25 million investment from the EU and the partners up to 500 million over time. So how did what made you so confident in this, and what's the plan also in achieving this, or what is the plan?
Sure, let's look at the numbers first, actually, because that's the good news. So we have managed during the course of the program to pull together a funnel of around about €1 billion. So we see sight of €1 billion. I dare say it's BABLE. You'll be calling me afterwards. But of that billion, we've managed to funnel it through the process and captured 265 million. So of the 24 million that we got at the beginning, we've really stimulated that significantly. And I think that ratio is an important one, and it's not big enough. So how do you go about doing that? If I was to put it into a very human terms, I always use the parallel of running a marathon. So if the four of us decided to run a marathon, who's going to win? I think I know. But there's certain things that we'd have to do. We'd have to register. We'd have to figure out how fit we were. We'd have to go out and buy running shorts or new running shoes. So there's some fairly standard things that you need to do, which are about you, the social side of you, which are about the technical side of what it is that we need to get and equip ourselves in terms of kit, and also in terms of, shall we say, the money and how we structure all of those. So if you put it in a very human sense, you can start to think about doing some things through consistency. With consistency, you build confidence. And that word is really, really important, particularly in the cities market. So cities are not very confident, particularly because they're doorstopped by a lot of technology companies and advisors and others. So you've got a market situation where cities are nervous. They've got press, politicians leaning over their shoulders in terms of making sure they do the right thing. And if they don't, then, unfortunately, society doesn't necessarily help them out as individuals. So in order to actually get scale replication, what we need to do is to build that confidence. How do you build the confidence? Well, step number one is if you take a design of a solution which is based on the user or the city or both, then that's a good place to start. And that's very much where we started the activity. That's, in other words, understanding what the city needs are, and more importantly, understanding what the common needs are. A bit like running a marathon. We all need to buy running shoes. We all need to do administration and such like. If you have a user-centric design, then you can focus on what are the common, consistent, functional things that you want that solution to do. The functional things, not the physical things. The lampposts in Greenwich are special and different, and that's good. But some of the functional things that you want to do in terms of plugging EV into the lamppost can be consistent. If it's consistent, it can be standardized. If it's standardized, you build confidence. If you build confidence and you standardize, you create a market. You create a market, you excite the industry, who will put more energy into sales and R&D and such like, and you're beginning to get scale. So the intention behind that 500 million crazy idea that we had many years ago is to package solutions, to put packaged solutions together, which are addressing first and foremost a user need, societal opportunity, that define what are the technical options that would solve or improve things for society, and what are the business models and finance mechanisms to actually build those technical solutions. And most importantly, then, not just to do it and say a one size fits all, fits everybody, it's to understand the context of every city in the same way that would understand the context of the four of us, so that we start to actually understand who's going to win the marathon. And that's the important subtlety. So that simple basic thing of social, technical, business models and financing surrounded by the context of the city is the mechanism by which we do it. And then just to close it all off, Sarah's been talking about some examples of solutions, e-bikes, smart lampposts, etc. What we're doing in Sharing Cities is to write down, importantly, to the audience. So rather than producing lots of big, thick reports to the Commission, which other cities won't necessarily use, we're trying to write to a politician, which therefore means it needs to be in a short, sharp, clear statement in political speak. Or writing, so a leadership guide that tells them the gift of knowledge, the key issues to think about, the actions they should think about taking. And then the other one that we've produced, I think 4 or 5 of, is a playbook, which, if you like, is an instruction guide, A to Z for the project manager that needs to pick up and run with this. And so we've got some of those out. So that's complements the demonstration, starts to look at what we can do to write down things in words, and also develop some tools that can then be used to scale up. That's good for society, good for cities, basically better, cheaper, faster. And it's good for industry too. So that's kind of what we're up to. Sounds ambitious. It is ambitious. It's really hard. And we all need to get behind doing it, frankly. I'll stop at that.
Oh, and that's was one hell of a pathway you showed up, and it all started with us getting ready and having the first runs, so to say, added to see also what are the difference, what can be standardized and what cannot be. Sarah, so you have been working on a smart lighting project in Greenwich, and I assume that within the project you have also compared to what other cities are doing. So what do you see there? What can really cities do together, or what are the similarities across cities, and what was the things that were really special for Greenwich? And maybe tell us a little bit more about the smart lighting project, smart lampposts first.
Yeah, sure. So as Graham said, there's cities are different, people are different. The analogy of the marathon, all of us are different. We may run it differently, we may perform differently. But it's finding the common stream and documenting that and seeing how that could scale. So when we came together as a group of cities and Sharing Cities, we have common, what we call use cases, or common ideas or common projects. So we're all looking at what can we do with e-bike technology, what can we do with smart lighting, what can we do with retrofit. And we developed some common understanding of those and what we wanted to achieve, and some shared approaches. But the way we applied the technology in our context, or the type of use case that we chose, may have slightly changed from Greenwich to Lisbon to Milan. And in Greenwich, when we talked about smart lighting, or we talked about the potential to use technology combined with existing street infrastructure such as lamp columns, our focus drew us to use cases around LED lighting, which a lot of the cities shared, smart management of that lighting, and particularly a use case around electric vehicle lamppost charging. And a few years ago, when we started to explore this use case, it was very new. This technology, I think, everyone attending this webinar might find examples of this technology now online and in different cities. And a few years ago, when we sort of came across this idea of a use case around using lamp columns to facilitate EV charging infrastructure, the challenge that we were looking to address was the fact that in London, and especially in Greenwich, we've got as in many cities across Europe, we've got very dense areas. So the streetscape is already quite busy, lots of infrastructure. There's dense housing. We're not necessarily off-street parking that enables someone to park on the drive and charge from their home. So for us, this was a way of solving that and solving the answer of how do we provide EV charging infrastructure in those kind of settings, so that to enable a shift to low carbon transport. And we worked very closely with industry as a municipality to provide that technical solution that would integrate within our existing lamp columns, so an EV charging point inside a lamp column. And one of the things we chose to do with this, and as Graham mentioned, was ask the city or ask our citizens where they would like to see this technology deployed. So we used an online engagement platform called Commonplace, and we went out to all of our residents in the borough, and we asked them to put a pin in a map online of where they would like to see EV lamppost charging infrastructure. And we took that and we shortlisted it, and we found out which were suitable. And we have delivered about 26 of these points across 9 streets in the borough. And it's been a fantastic scheme. It's worked really well. In its first year of operation alone, we saw about 4,000 kilowatt hours of energy charged. That's the equivalent to facilitating about 16,000 miles driven, or about 2,400 tons of CO2 saved. So it's a perfect example of how we've used technology. We've taken the shared thought across our cities of what can we do with technology in a lamp column, and we've come up with a use case specific to Greenwich around charging points and provision of charging infrastructure within a lamp column.
Okay, thanks for this, Sarah. Jem, so the what Graham mentioned with how this all works in, so to say, that from getting the shoes to actually starting the running, there's a lot of steps in between. And when we listen to what Sarah just said, starting with the right path is super important. So what do you think about how this worked in sharing cities, and how this can be used elsewhere as well?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. So I just wanted, I suppose, to highlight a key point of learning in sharing cities on the topic of use cases. So the smart cities market, as many of us know, is largely focused on the solution, and it doesn't always sufficiently consider the demand. So what it is that cities or communities, people or place actually need. There are many examples, unfortunately, of pre-existing technology solutions being retrofitted to a city's needs, and often this leads to a lack of public trust or engagement with the solutions that are being put in a city. But really, the kind of emphasis is also on cities to improve how they express their needs to the marketplace. So to be clear on the issue that we need addressing in the city to help build up these use cases. So many use cases. So what we obviously mean by use cases, the situation in which a specific technology could be used, are common to most cities. That's what we found in sharing cities. There are lots of differences between us, but a huge amount of commonality between how we work and what we need, what our citizens need. So what we've tried to do in sharing cities is document those use cases and share experiences to help kind of accelerate this process through standardizing how we're capturing those use cases and kind of sharing them. I just wanted to also add, if I could, a point to Graham's answer there about how we ensure the replicability of what we're doing. A really important part of sharing cities has been peer-to-peer learning. So as I suggested, sharing cities follows a model where we have 3 main lighthouse cities and 3 fellow cities. And what this does is to allow fellow cities to collaborate with lighthouse cities who are essentially going first, typically a bit bigger, perhaps a bit better resourced, a little bit more advanced, usually in their kind of sustainable and smart city strategies. And they do this through a process of research and analysis, really, against what the lighthouse cities are doing, assessment of what can be done in their own cities to learn and to replicate at their own pace. So all 6 cities by the end of the programme have demonstrated the benefits that using smart technology and working together can have, obviously, on reducing carbon and service delivery in their own cities, albeit at a different pace and to different scales. So I suppose just wanted to add really that I think being part of a network of cities is crucial to success. Sharing cities, whether they're lighthouse or fellow, are connected with 34 partners from across public and private sectors, which really enhances the kind of collaborative practice and success. And obviously we work hard, you know, as a central team to connect partners to each other so that we become more than the sum of our parts and really learn from each other. I think that's really important when it comes to replicating what we're doing and scaling up.
Brilliant. Before we continue the discussion on how to actually replicate and scale, we have a question from the audience. I'm not sure who to place it to, so it might be towards Jem or Graham. Let me see who of you wants to do it more. So Matthias from Hamburg is asking what the role of Eurocities is within sharing cities and what they are doing there. So who of you would like to answer that one?
I'm happy to answer that. Yes, I think I'm this way, aren't I? So yeah, Eurocities. Thanks, Matthias. So Eurocities are a really important partner in sharing cities. I think they were one of the founding partners, or certainly instrumental in how the programme came together. Eurocities have been very involved in 2 of our work packages in particular, one around communications and dissemination, but probably most importantly for sharing cities has been this replication work package. So obviously, as we know, Eurocities is a network, a really extensive network of cities. So they've been very important in sharing the learning from the programme. In particular, recently they worked closely with about 5 or 6 cities that they engaged specifically to work on developing these were smaller cities, to work on developing their smart cities action plans, and essentially to match make partners and cities within the Sharing Cities programme to these 5 smaller cities who sat outside the programme, who'd expressed an interest in kind of upskilling and building their knowledge. Really, I suppose what was very important for these cities is then to kind of equip their their officers with the tools and the information to then make the case for expanding kind of smart cities activities in their own cities to decision makers and to politicians.
Brilliant. Thanks for this, Jem. Thanks, Matthias, for the question. Graham, if you've shown a very picturesque way of how it could be the right way of scaling solutions, and it starts a lot with the preparation. So let's look at this from the other angle, and to make it just more clear as well. So what are currently the reasons why a lot of the projects that we are thinking, and the general idea from the Commission with the Smart Cities and Communities projects was actually these pilots across the lighthouse cities are being financed and then they scale. So why are they not yet?
I don't think that the Commission are forceful enough in terms of driving that agenda. So I think that the European Commission, from the policy officers, are very clear what they want, and they want the right things, but more from a contract management standpoint, the servant and master sort of mindset between those that are getting paid by the administrative contractual management part of the Commission. I think that's a breakage point in terms of governance at a European level, to be frank. So that I think is one. I think if I take it then down to a city level, like human beings, we all want personalized things. So the focus is first and foremost on the city and themselves. A city is not incentivized to actually support others, and that's a statement directly from Rotterdam, one of the other lead cities. So that we have a kind of mindset and institutional setup which isn't helping that aspect of demand aggregation and scale. so there's a desire to seek bespoke solutions, which is exactly the counter direction to what we want. So I think at a kind of top level, at a European Commission level, and also, by the way, at a national level, there needs to be more action in terms of stimulating replication and scale. And at a city level, I think there needs to be more focus on what is common than what is different. So a lot of it actually is between the ears of individuals. We put papers in front of us as excuses. I think we need to change our mindset first and foremost.
Interesting. Bringing it actually down to the cities, Sarah, we often talk in these projects around international scaling and the partnerships. You know, you're working with Lisbon, with Rotterdam, quite a hike there, especially with a bicycle. So how do you interact? Or we have just seen with the people we've been working with that lots of the scaling happens locally. So it's actually the neighbor that you can take the bus to and talk with in person a lot. So how is the interaction, and what kind of feeling do you get when you talk to other boroughs in London or other cities across the UK about the things that you are doing, and what's, so to say, also the interest in those?
Yeah, I think I'd say that the interest is definitely there, and I'd say that there is a growing network of people now with that interest and wanting to share what they're doing. I think there was, and that started, I guess, with the group of us as UK cities that were in this journey of being as part of the Smart Cities and Communities Horizon work and Horizon work stream. And especially, I guess, with the, not to mention it, but the word Brexit, which we're all very disappointed about. There was this thing of us as UK cities getting together and being like, look, we've had a fantastic experience as part of the SCCO1, being able to work with European colleagues, as Jem said, that often have shared challenges and shared experiences. We need to do a bit better as UK cities of talking, especially those that were at the front running of that Horizon Smart Cities and Communities stream. So we got together as a group of UK cities, very much driven by the Sharing Cities Programme Management Office at GLA, and we formed our own sort of mini network to share those experiences, both from the governance side. So, you know, how are you getting on with your Horizon 2020 projects, but also quite a lot of these projects, as we know, share common use cases, share experiences. So what technology company are you using? How have you got over this particular technical challenge? So that's, I think, grown over the last few years. It's grown in terms of membership, and it's grown in terms of sort of the examples that other cities are bringing forward and sharing of what technology and what innovation they have been doing and sharing it with us. So yeah, I'd say in the last few years, it's certainly the communication or the interest between cities at UK level has certainly grown. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for this, Sarah. So there is actually, when it comes to the scaling, also, as you say, a national network developing. Jem, maybe we can discuss this a little bit, especially when you talk about, you know, advice you would give to cities across the UK, maybe the old friends such as Manchester and Nottingham that have been involved in similar kind of projects, but maybe also beyond these, you know, big cities, the larger cities across the UK. What kind of advice would you give them if they start their own journey towards these smart city projects within their municipality?
Absolutely. So I think for this, you know, it's important to know what your challenges are. So I think I'd start with some of the key blockers to progress that we are aware of, both through Sharing Cities and as officers in the GLA working with boroughs. You know, a lack of confidence in technical solutions is often a key one. Potentially an absence of a city budget to cover costs in full. So the challenges around justifying expenditure and how you go about that, that's a key challenge. Perhaps difficulties in aligning the kind of inputs and returns from the various city departments and the service providers, kind of managing that relationship is sometimes, I know, a key challenge. And then finding the right partners, you know, that's really important. So, you know, I think so. To work backwards, finding the key partners. So the CBI recently reported that actually without cross-sector partnerships, bringing together government, industry, academia, the investment community as appropriate, we're really not going to achieve the kind of game-changing scale that we need to. So I think cities, reaching out and being open to collaboration with others is really important, and finding those right partners to kind of complement them and move forward together. So really, I'd say, what's crucial is to take that city needs led approach to commissioning when it comes to smart and digital technology, going back to what we'd said previously, to really as a city be able to define what your challenges are, and it's okay not to know the answer really about what the solution is. You need to know what your challenge is and kind of what you want to improve, and then work with the market to find those solutions. So something we have that hopefully would be of help to anyone kind of looking to start on this journey are what we call our playbooks. So a major kind of output of Sharing Cities are our playbooks. They're intended to be practical guides that provide a step-by-step process for other cities looking to replicate smart solutions in their own kind of context. So if you go to our website, sharingcities.eu, then you'll be able to download straight away playbooks on each one of our different types of technology that have in there, a kind of breakdown to help you build that use case of, what kind of challenge those particular technologies might solve. They have contextual information about how they were applied. As I say, in the area of building retrofit, we applied them across public buildings, private buildings, but also historical buildings. We retrofitted Lisbon's very historic city hall, which brought about 60% in energy saving. And those playbooks also signpost you to more information. The Sharing Cities programme will be running until the end of the year. So by all means, any city wanting advice or support, we're always happy, obviously, to share our learning and to point you in the direction of who we think can help. But I'd suggest the playbooks would be a good starting point for that kind of basic information that any city wanting to kind of embark on this journey around excuse me, smart cities programs, particularly in an integrated way, a suite of different technologies brought together by a data platform, coupled with a program of citizen engagement. The playbooks are a good place to start.
Thanks, Graham.
Yeah, so just to add to that point, you pricked it very gently, Alex, which was most people don't live in large cities in Europe. Most people live in the small ones, and the small ones are under capacity. So I think what Jem is talking about in terms of, and also Sarah, so the network building of UK cities, common jurisdiction, common understanding of what's the framework conditions around the city, that's really, really important and must include the smaller ones. The confidence of smaller ones is low. The capability is at times lower, but yet they're nimble and able. So what's for me very important is to understand where are the small giants out there that are doing great things. Where can they innovate and design for small and scale up to big, and really be a counterbalance to this, shall we say, a London-based solution, although London is in itself lots of little cities. We must focus on addressing where most people live, which is smaller cities. And we need to understand, do they have the same needs? Well, many are not. What solutions? So that packaging approach needs to be something which is inculcated and appropriate to all different types and sizes and locations of cities. So this journey that we're talking about is right at the very beginning in terms of managing to get real scale replication.
And that is actually where I want to continue also with the next question to you, Graham, because we have Giuseppe here in the audience as well, who is the Director General for Med Cities, conglomerate of Mediterranean cities of many different sizes on the southern border of the EU, but also on the northern part of Africa. So when you think about these scalings, and you mentioned earlier, why stop at Europe's boundaries, right? So when you think about these steps of also bringing the knowledge that we gain in Europe over its borders. What do you think would be the right approaches, and or the things that would be valued most?
Yeah, so we're doing that right this very minute with some of the investment community, in terms of a number of different developing countries, where we are applying the tools with so baseline assessment tools, simple, practical baseline assessment tools, which we applied in Sharing Cities right at the very beginning, and have been applied in probably about a dozen different cities around Europe, so that you've got a comparison that could be done in 40 minutes. Not in, paying an advisor loads of money to do a detailed assessment, a lot of metrics that disappear into their paperwork. So that's one thing that's going on right now. And then the idea of the playbooks, we've already engaged with Latin American cities as part of Sharing Cities around some of the new innovative things that we're doing at the moment. One example is a beautiful one, actually, so Sarah was talking earlier about lampposts, and asking people where they'd like an electric vehicle charging point on a lamppost. That's a good thing. It can also be a bad thing, because it means that the people that have bought the Teslas that got lots of money are complaining they want the dart thrown at the map of Greenwich just outside my door. What we're currently working on is something called Mobility Islands, which is about shared, soft, smaller micro-mobility and electric mobility and renewables to create a location which everybody can go to get primary access within 5 minutes of their door to the starting point of their journey. Digitize that. So that's the innovation aspect of the continuous innovation, and that's stuff that we've helped Latin American cities. And I would like to see that sort of thing being packaged up, being accepted by the investment community, and then pushed out to the developing world once we've, of course, done that in Europe, which is a bit of a journey yet.
Thank you. Do you want to add anything on this, Sarah? All good. All good. Thanks for this, Graham. Also, Joseph, thanks for joining in the discussion. So no boundaries, but a lot of tasks when it comes to scaling what we learn in Europe to other places. So we've been going from the London activities to European and beyond European activities. Let's talk about time frames a little bit. The Sharing Cities project is coming to an end by the end of this year, unfortunately, but that's how our publicly funded projects work in that sense. So, Jem, what's the plan? So, what's gonna come afterwards? A lot of these great activities still, so to say, blooming across Europe.
Absolutely. They certainly are. So in terms of our 6 cities, all of our 6 cities have had significant influence within their markets, both domestically and internationally. And that work will very much continue, that scale up work, where our cities and our demonstrator areas continue to influence outside of their kind of geographical focus. So, for example, Milan is very much influencing the adoption of urban sharing platforms in dozens of other Italian cities. Lisbon continues to expand its infrastructure solutions for urban mobility across the entire city outside of its demonstration zone, and really transforming the way people think about moving around the city. Greenwich, obviously, Sarah can talk extensively about this, but is very much taking advantage of the proven benefits of their building upgrades to expand that approach across its building portfolio, which has the potential to influence not just financially but socially the kind of quality of life for its citizens across the borough. Warsaw is in the process of implementing electric mobility islands, upgrading the city's parking facilities, including more than about 800,000 euros of investment, I think, towards its park and ride scheme to boost the use of e-mobility and reduce congestion. And Burgas, as Graham said, those kind of small giants, Burgas has been really fantastic, I think, inspirational in its scale-up activities and its determination to learn. It's already captured about 175 million pounds of euros of investment across 15 projects influenced by the learning of being part of the Sharing Cities network. So that's that's all to say that, for example, what happens in Warsaw holds considerable sway across Poland, as has been the case with Lisbon and Portugal, and collaboration opportunities have been identified for our 6 cities, working as far as afield, as Graham said, as Latin America and Asia Pacific. So I think I conclude that by saying, you know, increasingly working together with other smart city lighthouse programs and the European Smart Cities marketplace, there's been a growing pool of regional and national cities and towns that are demonstrating the potential to scale up and making it real. And we're really proud to say in Sharing Cities that our 6 cities have really contributed to that progress.
Brilliant, and that's, as it seems, the seeds are going to continue to grow. Nevertheless, we see, and that's going to be our last question also now to the audience, after having listened to quite some great input from all 3 of you on the scaling of solutions nationally, or regionally, nationally, and internationally. So one last question that we would have to you in the audience. What do you see as the main barriers to scaling and replicating smart city projects? You can answer to as many places that you seem meaningful. You know, earlier we have asked already on how many people know about Sharing Cities, and it's been a rather big percentage of our audience today. And as we are also still part of the London Tech Week, something that is also interesting, another question from Matthias, and that's mostly to Sarah, and likely a quick answer. The Royal Borough of Newham, with the Olympic Park there. You talking? Is there any activity to, you know, join forces to do something?
Yeah, we definitely speak to them. There are over the river neighbours, so we always keep in touch with the boroughs around us, and they've done a lot of great work with the opportunity of the Olympic Park and the post stages of past the Olympics, how that was regenerated. We particularly worked with them on what they've done around data gathering and data platforms, and used some of their learning from an EU project they were involved with. In terms of some of the sort of components of the data platform, such as sort of authentication, storage. We used that learning and worked with them on that when we were coming up with the components of our own data platform as the London City Data Store.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for this. We have another question from the audience, and that goes maybe to all of you. So I'll take a hand who wants to ask first from Marijn. And he asked, when it comes to involving and engaging citizens in the deployment of technology in cities, in your experience, have you found methods or ways to enable, and now that's the stressor on, a true inclusion of local communities in these processes? So have you found ways to truly include them, and not just so that it fits on a front paper? Who wants to go on that one first? Sarah?
I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there. So I think my answer would be, I think it needs to be on a scheme or project or use case by use case basis. I think there's 2 different scales to this. There is general true inclusion and citizen involvement in the direction of a city and what the city needs and what the citizens would like to see in their city. That is a big question. It's one that municipalities and cities all over struggle with getting that meaningful engagement and where and how to do that. My answer would more come in the sort of case by case, project by scheme basis. And as Jem touched on before, what we've looked to do in each development of the use cases we've worked on or the projects we've worked on is start with engagement. And that, just to give an example, when we engaged about the electric and shared mobility schemes we were going to deliver through Sharing Cities, we did a demand and engagement exercise that went out to hundreds of homes across the demonstrator area and asked them their opinions, their sort of wishes or their attitudes towards a range of electric shared and mobility schemes, and that got back a really good response. Then when it came to the design of specific schemes, such as the EV lamppost charging one we've mentioned, the use of the commonplace platform and allowing people to put a pin in a map was really useful. We got over 1,000 visitors to that page, and it was a really useful method. I don't think that's, and the reason why I suggest it is a case-by-case basis, because I don't think that works for everything. In that case, you're asking people to clearly put a pin in a map for what is quite a geographical thing. It's where is EV infrastructure going. When we've used similar approaches such as commonplace platform to engage on retrofit, it perhaps hasn't had that reach, or it hasn't had that ability to engage with people around the retrofit of a particular social housing estate, because it isn't the best use of that kind of platform or that kind of geographical representation and engagement. So I think it varies on a case-by-case basis. For the case of the lamppost charging, the use of online engagement was really effective.
Brilliant, thank you for this. Anyone wants to add on that part? Great question, Marijn, on this. Yes, please, Graham. And also then Jem.
Oh, sorry, Karen.
So two quickies. And this is about the digital side of things. So to complement the engagement of people, there's some new technologies out there that harvest data in an appropriate way to actually give an opinion from a community. So you can have location-based demand signal, which complements the dialogue, and that's drawing in the data side. The second thing, which is part of what Sharing Cities has done, is something called the digital social market. So once you're actually involved with some work, we can engage and incentivize people. So we're really starting to get people to participate somewhat more operationally as well. And I think those are two areas where the digital agenda can really improve what is absolutely vital, which is actually getting a genuine, authentic conversation with society. Jem.
Thanks, Graham. Exactly. I think just to add briefly to what you've both said, and to answer the question, absolutely, this is really of critical importance. You know, what's clear is that the adoption of smart infrastructure needs to be managed carefully and transparently, and that the local community always should be engaged in decisions about data collection and the use of data. That has proven really critical for the success of pilot projects and their potential to scale. So in Sharing Cities, we use a range of let's say citizen-focused methods to enable this collaboration involving communities. For example, co-design workshops, user journey mapping, excuse me, to help us understand how different groups might interact with different types of technologies. And as Graham said there, a key success, I think, came from our digital social market model. So the idea for the digital social market was, you know, a kind of functionality designed to encourage behavior change and environmentally kind of conscious choices, using, in the case of Milan, peer-to-peer incentives and rewards. So Milan's Sharing Me platform proved really successful in directly engaging people around incentives and rewards. In the case of Greenwich, obviously it was quite a different model around the digital social market, engaging local residents in the technologies that had been put into their buildings. And in the case of Lisbon, again, it was the same principle but a different model of citizen engagement that we were proving, which was focused specifically on schools and engaging school children and their parents, and running a competition between schools. So I think, yeah, in general, you know, this design-led approach, which is led by the needs of citizens, we can say confidently has delivered substantial benefits to our demonstrated districts. It's led us to not only exceeding our environmental targets in a range of areas, but more importantly, to answer this question, in creating solutions that are adopted by the local community and that are built to last. That's really important, that obviously you bring citizens in so that they use these technologies, which are obviously for them, because if not them, then who are they for? So yes, I certainly agree with that, and it's something we've tried to make progress on in Sharing Cities.
You're on mute, Alex, I think.
Thank you for that, Graham. I very much think that Marijn, having a design background, appreciates your answers a lot in the joint design with citizens. So the last thing we want to do now, you all see this Slido, this word cloud up here. We asked what the main barriers to scaling and replicating smart city projects are. And you get a very diverse set of answers, but also with some core, let's say, problems, challenges in the middle. So I would like each one of you to have like a 1 or 2 sentence comment on what you see here. And I'm going to start with Graham, of course, and then Jem and Sarah afterwards. So a very brief comment on what you see here and what you would say to those people that are putting these up as their challenges. Please go.
Yeah, so, thank you. I'd say to them, thank you. It's spot on. And the one right in the middle in terms of funding, money matters. It's not, there are lots of different types of investors. We need to understand the different types of investors, and we need to understand how best to engage them. Alas, all too many of them look at cities and say, too small, too slow, too risky. I've heard those from the lips of investors. That's changing, and it's great to see that change. What we need to do to address this and scale rapidly is to understand how we can bring cities and investors a lot closer together. And that's a change of mindset and thinking and tools to actually liberate different business models, different financing and different funding mechanisms to actually get scale. Because I'll tell you what, public funds and my taxes, they're in short supply.
Thanks, Graham. Jem.
Thank you. So I think my kind of 2 concluding feelings would be, one, as I said earlier, find the right partners. It's really important, I think, to kind of build a partnership around a shared vision and agree how you're going to get there. Finding the right partners is really important. And then exactly to build on what Graham said there, funding was always going to be the big word in the middle of that for cities. We've held a number of conversations with investors through sharing cities. And what I'd say is the investor community is diverse. It's important to understand the risk profiles of projects at an early stage and matchmake with the right type of capital. If it's a good idea, then typically there will be somebody to fund it. We need to make the process around gaining investment as uniform as possible to allow for scale and speed. We need to aggregate demand. That's the absolutely important nut to crack. We're trying to do that in London around our 33 boroughs to aggregate that demand, because of course that's very appealing to the investment community. And scale can also mean repeatable projects, not necessarily size. What we hear from investors is a pipeline of investment opportunities is as interesting as scale in the more traditional sense. So I think be strategic and see what kind of suite or portfolio of smart tech projects you might be able to kind of group together to make that as interesting as we can for the investor community.
Thank you, Jem. Sarah.
Yeah, so I think I agree wholeheartedly with what Graham and Jem has said. So I won't touch on the funding one, but from the local authority perspective or the municipality perspective, a lot of things stand out for me there that I have experienced in the last few years with sort of delivering smart city projects. Breaking silos, competing agendas, political support, split priorities, bureaucracy internally, fear and fatigue. And I would say it only takes a few committed officers that really believe in what you're trying to do, believe that they're exploring innovative things, exploring new technologies, will really help to solve problems and will improve the city and improve the lives of the people that live there. It takes those couple of committed people to find the others that in the organisation that might share the same opinion or might be able to be influenced or shown how it could work to really gain momentum. So I just encourage people to keep going. It's certainly not an easy journey, but it only ever takes a couple of committed people to make a difference.
Thanks for that, Sarah. And we're very happy that you guys, 2014, I think, Graham, you said when you started putting this all together, that you stayed 7 years now on this. You are already continuing the work. I take away from this great discussion, and I would like to thank all 3 of you for amazing input and great work on this. I take away that one of the first things you need to start is right information and the right people to do it with. Also your information, especially also the work from Greenwich and from Sharing Cities, you can also find on our platform, www.bable-smartcities.eu. Join, learn from what Greenwich is doing, learn from what the Greater London Authority is doing, but also learn from hundreds of other cities, use cases from all across Europe. You will also find a link in the comments on the smart lighting solutions that we have been talking a lot about during this event. This is also linked, of course, to the Graham's work and the Sharing City work on smart lighting and the playbooks that you have heard. That we will be finding links there on that too. So all of you learn from each other, get to know each other, start the next projects, and we'll be very happy to facilitate these kinds of discussions. Again, thanks a lot to Jam, Graham, Sarah for great work, and everyone that's listening now. I wish you a great continuation of the London Tech Week and a great rest of the week and a great weekend. Thanks for joining in. Have a good one.
Alex. Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you all.
Yes.